Meet Andrew, born 9:30 p.m. on Friday the 5th of February. Here, just 3 days old, weighing in at 2.98 kilograms. Born into a pandemic, just after a recession, this life didn't start boring. From here, it'll keep picking up momentum. Before we know it, we're 15 and fighting to get into the workforce, trying to forge our own path, and searching for purpose and happiness. We're a lucky nation, but we're not all lucky all of the time. Only some of us will enter our twilight years still fighting fit. And then one day retirement arrives and we're in the deep end, hoping we'll be okay financially and have time to notice all those moments we missed in the rush.
What superannuation is about is personal empowerment. You shouldn't be forced to eat your own home. You know, if you've got 300 or 400 or 500,000, you have options. Since 2013, there's been a 10% increase in labour productivity, 9.8 percentage points. Not any of it went to wages. It's all gone to the balance sheet of companies. It's all gone to profits. So working people have been robbed in terms of real wage adjustments.
Wouldn't it be better if they just got a wage rise instead of more super?
The only way that ordinary working men and women are going to get any benefit from their own labour is the 2.5% super. And if they don't get the 2.5% super, they get nothing.
Almost 150,000 Australians will launch themselves into retirement this year. Enough to fill this stadium 3 times. Now we're out of recession now, but carrying a legacy of debt, high unemployment, volatile financial markets, and minuscule interest rates. So what will the impact of that be on you and your retirement, especially now that we're living so much longer? And how do you make sure that you don't get caught short?
My name's Andrew Thompson, I'm 48, I'm a full-time taxi driver in Melbourne. COVID's been incredibly tough on all of us. About 4 years ago we were actually earning about $400 a day, and then when COVID hit we were down to like $20 to $40 a day, and it was causing problems with the family. We were arguing, fighting, you know, thinking, what do we do? Do we pay the rent or do we eat? And then you've got the awkward conversation with the landlord and, you know, like, well, we've got to buy food this week, we can't afford to pay the rent. When the Victorian government cancelled all the taxi licences in Victoria, I essentially had my house repossessed by the bank. I'm broke and penniless and just about turning 50. I'm currently living now in a small house down Frankston Way with my wife and 5-year-old son. It's been very traumatic for us, going from having a nice home that I've worked very, very hard for to be pushed into a small rental. I'm sort of reassessing my goals every minute of every day and having to work a second job. I guess my motto in life, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and keep pushing forward, dust yourself off, stand up, keep fighting.
Recessions always leave a cohort far worse off, and unfortunately, you know, well, luckily it's not as big as it could have been, but there's still a significant number of people who don't have their job back, not earning an income, not saving.
It's hard to quantify the average amount Australians have in their super, but for a lot of people it won't be enough to retire comfortably, particularly as compulsory super only came into effect in 1992. According to the most recent ATO data, the average balance for those with superannuation at 60 to 64 was around $280,000 for women and $345,000 for men, a gap of 19%.
When it comes to the definition of what's an adequate retirement income, the metric for that we suggest is the replacement rate, saying that it should be 65 to 75% replacement rate of your working life income.
The government asked the Productivity Commission to report on superannuation in 2019, and then they commissioned a new review of the entire retirement system. A 600-page report was handed down in November last year, but the government is yet to announce how they're going to put it into practice. Mike Callaghan, who was once former Treasurer Peter Costello's Chief of Staff, chaired that report.
Rather than putting things in little boxes, I think it would be much better to be looking at the system as a whole, and even for the government to have its retirement income policy, looking at the overall operation of all the various components and how they interrelate.
One of the key considerations of the report was the superannuation guarantee and an analysis of the impact of going ahead with the compulsory super increase. Currently, an employer has to pay an eligible employee 9.5% of their earnings for ordinary hours of work into a superannuation account. The super guarantee is legislated to increase to 12% by 2025, but there's now a question as to whether the government will proceed with the rise.
We shouldn't fool ourselves. A rise in the super guarantee will come at a trade-off. It'll come as a trade-off to wages and particularly to wage growth.
Right, but is the government considering not doing it?
Well, the Prime Minister has said very clearly that he'll make a decision closer to the time, and the reason why he'll make a decision closer to the time is because he has to consider the economic circumstances that are relevant at that point in time. But that said, the rise is legislated. Undoing legislation by its very nature is a difficult thing to do.
In a compulsory system, you have to be careful that you don't impose too much of a reduction in your standard of living in your working life to achieve a standard of living in retirement.
So Callaghan and Hume both say that increases in the SG come at the expense of wages growth. What's your response to that?
It's complete nonsense. On their reasoning, we should have seen real wage increases. If there was no super, on their reasoning, you'd see real wage increase. There's been zero real wage increase for 8 years.
What do you think is the optimal percentage of salary to go into super? Is it 12, 15, 10?
It's the same with the parliamentarian, got 15, I'd say, 15. When Mark Latham, as opposition leader, convinced John Howard as Prime Minister to move away from the generous defined benefit schemes of parliamentarians, there was an inquiry into what a person needed, what contribution a person should make for their future, and that came out at 15%. And that's why the parliamentarians, the pollies, are on 15.4 in fact. So that's near, I think, the optional, and particularly now as earnings, yields from some shares, yields from equities and bond yields have fallen so far. There's no way a fund at 9.5% can give you the kind of accumulation I believe you need. So the answer is 15. Currently it's 12, but the government even wants to put the skewers through the 12, you know.
Navigating Australia's super system isn't easy. According to consumer group Choice, around 9.3 million Australians are put into default funds and then cling on, hoping for calm waters ahead. Most people just go into a default fund that they don't choose and ignore it. So do you think there should be some more regulation of both the performance that those funds produce and also their fees?
So I think, the Productivity Commission has said, that this is an issue, and, how we deal with it is interesting and challenging. We don't want to make the industry have too few players in it, otherwise competition goes out and then you start to get higher fees. So making sure, I can't really see the solution other than people being informed. I don't know how you regulate for that.
Do you think that superannuation fees are too high?
Yes.
What should be done? Are you going to get them down? How are you going to get them down?
Superannuation fees have always historically been too high, and that's across the industry, whether it be in retail industry or the corporate sectors. Even public service funds have high fees, and they should come down. Certainly on a global comparison, they're still way too high. But what we really want to do is push them down through competitive pressure.
The government is introducing superannuation reforms in July called Your Future, Your Super, to try and tackle some of these inefficiencies. From then on, one super fund will follow you from job to job, and members will be made more aware of underperforming funds.
Well, if you're in an underperforming fund, your fund will have to tell you, they will have to notify their members and say, hey, we haven't lived up to expectations. It'll also, part of that notification is a direction to go to the online comparison tool. So you can see whether your fund is not right for you, maybe you want to switch. And there'll be an opportunity to do that via that website as well.
Modelling by Choice says that around a quarter of the default MySuper funds would fail the performance test set out in Your Future, Your Super. And being in an underperforming fund for the whole of your working life could leave you close to $400,000 worse off in retirement.
My name is Afwerk Asefa. I'm 25 years old. I'm currently working and studying at the same time. I currently have 3 super funds. I'm kind of got put into them from my employees and didn't have much say. I don't know too much about the super funds. I don't know their fees or insurances or a number of details. You kind of get signed up to it when you first join up, and you don't really look into it because you don't think it's going to matter until later on in life. I think the lack of knowledge regarding superannuation is a common thing around people my age. I just don't think it's too much on our minds. To plan 40, 50 years ahead is a bit hard. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, but I think at my age you're more concerned about organising the chaos of what it means to set up life. I don't think we've ever had one discussion either amongst my friends or with teachers about retirement. Is it something that we should consider? Perhaps. I think it's wise to think into the future.
What advice would you give young people now thinking about their retirement? What should they do?
Well, the Callaghan report explicitly stated that as accumulations in super rose, people tended to be more adequate, find themselves in more adequacy in housing. So the more people can put into superannuation and let the great magic of compounding carry them along, they can find themselves with, $500,000, 600,000 at age 60, and they can knock off the balance of their mortgage.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7.30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.
You've got to be joking. You've got to be joking. One representative swell over there. He's more to be pitied than despised. He's simply going troppo. All this question proves if you've been on the backbench for too long, you shrivel up. You shrivel up.
Tonight, the Pied Piper of Australian politics. The elusive Paul Keating popped up in public again today with yet another of his visions for Australia's future.
Today I wish to propose the creation of a comprehensive national retirement income scheme. Unless we can move, and move rapidly, we will put the Commonwealth Government age pension system under unbearable stress and condemn an entire generation of elderly people to an unsatisfactory and poorly provided retirement.
The architect of Australia's superannuation system, Paul Keating, has been Australia's leading champion of compulsory super as the central means of funding retirement. So in 91 there was the unions were asking for a 3% pay rise, but Bernie Fraser at the Reserve Bank was getting worried about inflation and was getting ready to hike up interest rates. Yeah. So as I recall, you transferred the 3% into super, and there was a deal done with the ACTU to do that, right? And that was the beginning of superannuation.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to, with Bill Kelty, the two of us, but particularly, what I wanted to do was to give the workforce of Australia an enduring benefit from their happy participation in the reformation of the economy. You know, pulling wages down from 9% inflation down to 2 or 3 meant a lot of cooperation from the workforce.
Now, 30 years later, you've had obviously a lot of hindsight, a lot of experience looking at it. Would you do anything different if you knew then what you know now?
No, I don't think so, Alan. No, because you see, look, the classic scheme, if you look at the Norwegian fund or the Dutch fund, or what would have been the Hancock fund, and that is your wages are levied at a certain amount. It goes into a national fund. The fund is managed by the government, and you get a pension from it.
What's wrong with that?
I didn't want that. No. What I wanted was you got your pension from it, but you also you owned the capital. You owned the capital.
Nearly 3 decades on from the creation of compulsory super, nothing has challenged the health of our superannuation system like COVID-19. What did you think of allowing people to take money out of their super during the pandemic?
I mean, it was a breach of the key building block of superannuation is the preservation rule. You don't touch the money to age 60.
It's not only retirees feeling the impact of the economic downturn. More than 3 million people withdrew $36.4 billion worth of super during the pandemic. At least 450,000 of those were under 30. According to Industry Super Australia, over 700,000 people wiped out their total super balance, and most of those were under 35.
The government made young people broadly carry the burden of the pandemic themselves before JobKeeper and before JobSeeker. Yeah. And this means that someone 25, say, or 30, who's just pulled 25 or 30,000 out of their account, have lost $500,000 30 years down the track. You know, $500,000 for 30k now. You know, I mean, how could you do that to young people? So as these people get into their 50s and 60s, they're going to find they've got very poor superannuation, and they can thank the government for this.
But they'll tell you that they needed the money now. They needed it.
Well, as we know, they didn't need the money. And as you and I know, Alan, the central bank's now buying $100 billion worth of bonds, then another 100 billion, and now this week another 100 billion, so they didn't need the money.
But Superannuation Minister Jane Hume, who will now also take on the role of Minister for Women's Economic Security, defends the decision, given the extent of the crisis. A lot of Australians have cleaned out their super accounts during COVID-19, during the pandemic, because the government has allowed them to do that. Do you think you'll come to regret that in later years?
I think cleaned out might be a very misleading term, Alan.
They emptied their accounts. They took all of their super out.
A lot of people took money out of superannuation from duplicate accounts, and a number of those duplicate accounts were shut down in the process. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're talking about people tapping into their super to pay their bills, well, I actually don't think that that's necessarily the worst thing in the world. At that time, a massive financial uncertainty when people were, losing their jobs at such a rapid rate. The ability to tap into your own savings, your choice to do so, to spend that money on paying down your mortgage, paying off your car loan, paying down debts, cutting up credit cards, which we saw at a rate that we've never seen before last year. That's a good thing. But it wasn't compulsory. It was their decision. And I think that the coalition governments trust Australians enough to make the best financial decisions for them and their families.
When Keating established the superannuation system, he set out to give a fair go to all Australians. But women, like Sue Walton, have consistently fallen behind.
I'm an assistant in nursing in aged care. I've been there 17 years. I've got 9 grandchildren and another one coming in July. I'm 61 years of age now. When I was in my 40s, I was on track for retirement, Unfortunately, I got divorced and I started over again. I only have approximately $68,000 in my superannuation. I'm going to be in trouble when I retire. It makes me emotional because I'm a mother, a grandmother. It will affect my time when I retire as to the quality of life that I can live with my husband and also what I can do for my grandchildren. I work in a residential aged care facility. It's a very physically and mentally demanding job. I have an injury at the moment that's occurred at work, so I can't see myself working till I'm 67. I physically can't do it. I'm actually in the New South Wales Nurses and Midwifery Federation. I speak with a lot of other members and we all have the same problem. My husband now, Andrew, was an interstate truck driver. He was found to have a form of leukaemia, could not work anymore due to having no immune system. So the money that he was getting is completely gone. All right, behave yourself, okay? So it has been a devastating blow to all of us, especially to him. Well, my thoughts on the superannuation freeze at the moment, from 2014 to now, at 9.5%, I can't really tell you the words that I would like to describe that from every hard-working Australian, but it's disgraceful. They can't keep penalising us year in, year out. I'm 61, I retire at 67 or 69, depending. That's large dollars to me. Imagine what it would be like for my children in 30, 40 years' time. I can't even get a pay increase that was promised to me. I'm not looking forward to getting on the age pension. How anybody survives on that, I have no idea. I don't have much hope for the future. It's just one day at a time.
Average superannuation balances for men are around half what they need to be for a comfortable retirement. For women, they're around a third of what they need to be. So we're relying on our age pension system, and we know that women over 60 are the fastest growing group amongst the homeless because they don't have adequate savings.
Women have lower wages, more career breaks, work more part-time. They end up with lower superannuation balances than men. What the superannuation system in some respects is intensifying the inequities in working life.
Around 67% of people over 65 rely on the aged pension in some way. It supplements the income of those who've outlived their retirement savings, have lost money due to market downturns, or who didn't have enough of a nest egg in the first place. Do you think the pension is adequate?
The pension is a very suitable safety net as well as supplement to individual savings. On a global comparison scale, it's actually quite high. But the reason why we have a compulsory superannuation system is because we want people to have a higher standard of living in retirement above and beyond that safety net of the age pension.
The pension is very effective. In many respects, it's the backbone of the retirement income system. The pension has increased relative to wages, has increased relative to prices. And you also have to look at what the extra support that people over 65 on the pension get. And as I say, the other support they get, the social transfers in kind, the value of that is more than the pension.
The problem is, of course, that the Australian nation is ageing and greying, and there will be a very heavy bill for governments in the future, and that means a very heavy bill for the public.
For Keating, reflecting on the adequacy of the pension comes back to wider discussions about the retirement system as a whole, particularly with an ageing population.
This is one of the critical points. When I started this 35 years ago, 6.7 people between 15 and 65 carried the retirement burden of everyone over 65. Today that's 3.7, and by 2030 it will be 3. So you've got 3 people by 2030 looking after everyone over 65, where before there were 6.5 people. So that burden means that you want superannuation to be able to withdraw the burden of the pension, so the few taxpayers that are left in the system are not carrying it. You know?
Do you think part of the result of that is that the pension's insufficient, really, as a safety net? And I'm thinking particularly of women who often don't have superannuation because they've interrupted their careers.
I think pension adequacy is a really big point. But again, as the dependency ratio rises, and you've got more people my age relying on 3 taxpayers only to look after them, can we guarantee that the pension will even remain as generous as it is today? That's the big question. You see, this is why nothing beats self-provision. Nothing beats self-provision.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7.30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.
And 5.
Aged in their 40s and 50s, the Mermaids Masters team are preparing for the upcoming synchronised swimming nationals in June.
I ended up starting synchronised swimming when my eldest daughter, started.
So my daughter is part of the team, so we decided to join.
My daughter started doing it and I thought that it looked like fun.
They're yet to take the plunge into retirement, but they're thinking ahead. And like thousands of other Australians, they have their concerns. Exclusive research from Australian seniors shows almost 80% of members are worried they haven't saved enough for retirement. A quarter say they struggle to pay everyday bills. 10% will delay their retirement age due to COVID.
It would be nice to retire around 60, but I can't see it happening.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think I'll have to be working for a little bit longer.
Many Australians aim to retire from the age of 60, but the reality is a lot of us won't.
I've been at Puff and Billy as an employee for 24 years. I'm 67 years old. I trained as a signalman and a fireman. A lot of my friends have already retired. What retirement looks like for me, I can't see at the moment.
I'm here really to make a living, to pay my bill. I'm 65. I can't afford to retire.
I'm principal of a couple of schools and I write books, and I'm 70 years old. I'm a bit puzzled by the idea of retirement. The concept of it doesn't appeal to me. One of my mantras that I use quite frequently is, today's the youngest I'll ever be. And so I tell myself if I'm feeling a bit tired, well, I'll never be as young as this again.
I first started helping my dad in 1947. My name is Wen Chin and I've been at this market for over 70 years. I'm 83. I spend 7 days a week at the market here. I just keep on going, I won't retire.
We spend a long time thinking about the best way to save for retirement, but the decisions are far from over once you stop working, especially when it comes to the best way to use any savings you've been able to put away.
This is the problem, that people, through confusion, ignorance, complexity, are not getting the retirement outcome they could achieve and ending up leaving large balances as inheritances. You can look at changing the minimum drawdown. The bulk of people take that as their drawdown rate, which is not designed to help people achieve their retirement outcome.
The minimum drawdown is the legislated amount required to be withdrawn from a superannuation account each year, depending on your age.
Superannuation was never meant to be an untouchable nest egg on which you only live on the income. It was always there to draw down the capital as you work through your retired life. And that's why you get a tax concession, a generous tax concession going into superannuation, so that you eat the capital as you retire.
Right, but are you thinking about increasing the minimum drawdown? Do you think that would be a good idea?
I think that we should make sure that superannuation is flexible for retirees, as both in the accumulation phase and in the deaccumulation phase. You know, people are best placed to know how to spend their own money and when they spend their own money, and it's not really a liberal philosophy to force people to make those sorts of decisions. That said, we want to make sure that people have the options available to them to do so effectively, to spend their retirement income as efficiently, as effectively as possible, so that they have a high standard of living in retirement, which of course is the aim of the system.
The recent retirement income review concluded that using savings more efficiently in retirement could have a bigger impact on improving income than increasing the superannuation guarantee. Michael Callaghan, who headed the retirement incomes review, says that you could leave it at 9.5% and everyone would still end up with a decent income in retirement if they use their capital more efficiently, by which he means that they eat the capital.
Eat the capital, yeah.
Yeah. So what he says is, in fact, that the system was designed for that it wasn't designed for people to simply live off income. It was designed for people to actually live off the capital as well. Is that true?
Yeah, he wouldn't know. I designed the system. I used to say to the party, to the caucus of the Labor Party, what superannuation is about is personal empowerment. That is, you can cut the shape of your life, particularly at the end of your life, without reference to a government agency, without running down to Centrelink or working out what happens to you with the pension. In other words, you're in charge of your money. What they're saying is basically, look, 9.5 is enough if you eat all the capital. In other words, there's nothing. Yeah. But they're also saying this, you can spend it however you like. You can run down to the casino, you can blow your roll at the casino, but they're saying don't give any inheritance to the children, right? So it's all right to blow the roll, blow your money, but don't give any to your kids. I think superannuation, I think people in retirement think in family terms. I don't think they just think in personal terms.
But let's be clear about what you intended. Back in 1992, did you intend that some of the superannuation would be retained and passed on to the kids or not?
Yeah, yes, basically, yeah. For people to do with, that's the empowerment point, to do what they like with it. I'm not opposed to using some of the capital, but I'm opposed to the state telling you've got to burn it all out.
Years ago, you could get 6% interest on a term deposit at the bank. A retiree with, say, $500,000 of super could put it in the bank and make $30,000 in interest without taking any risk. But not anymore. Even before the pandemic, it was down to 2%. Now, 1%. Now, $500,000 in the bank at that rate would only make you $5,000. You simply cannot live on bank interest anymore. With interest rates this low, retirees are losers, but borrowers are winners. As a result, many retirees are having to take more risk and eat their capital, including the house, such as with a reverse mortgage, although they do have their pitfalls. According to exclusive data from Household Capital, couples in their late 60s to mid-70s are their biggest adopters of reverse mortgages, closely followed by single women in the same age bracket. For pensioners like Guy Fletcher Davies, it's been a much-needed income boost during retirement.
I'm 83 and I live in a little bit of paradise up here in Dalrymple Heights, about 100 k's west of Mackay.
Born in England in 1937, Guy served in the British Army and then became a carpet designer. He moved to Australia in the 60s.
I got a reverse mortgage in 2011 after a prostate cancer operation. I was very thankful to have it because I was able to pay the children back. It all donated towards the operation, which turned out to be a lot more expensive than any of us anticipated. So I am on the pension, $472 a week, and I live beyond my means. I've got rates to pay. gas, electricity, petrol, and buy food. Just reach for $400 every week for a month and see how you go paying the bills. Reverse mortgage to a degree has been my saviour. I've borrowed $75,000 to be here over the last 17 years. They're handy, I'd be lost without it. The only problem is, and I can't quite understand why, with the way the banks are and they're supposed to be helping, that they're still charging the interest or the level of interest that they are. It's always been in my mind that I would like to pass something on to the children. I've chosen to pay back at $400 a month to match the interest, because otherwise there won't be a house. When I fall off the twig, a place will be here for the children to have. And in the meantime, I've allowed myself to live here how I want. I'm not in a poky little room in an old people's home. I'm living out in the forest where I want to be.
There's a lot of claims made that I call it scaremongering, to say we're suggesting that people will have to sell their house to fund their retirement. It's not at all. The example that we have in the review is that if someone used the pensioner loan scheme, they had a $500,000 house, a pensioner at 67 drew $5,000 a year off the equity in their house. At age 92 and some conservative consumptions and house price growth, that person would still have 75% equity in their house. They don't have to sell their house. They've got 75% equity in the house that they can pass on to the kids, but an extra $5,000 a year for someone on the pension is a substantial improvement in their retirement outcome. It's an asset there that is underutilised that I think people should be thinking about making more use of their house to fund themselves in their retirement.
Callaghan also does say, in fact, that home equity should be used in retirement as well. What's wrong with that?
Firstly, it would be about forcing people to use it. I don't believe in forcing people to use it. You shouldn't be forced to eat your own home. But also, reverse mortgages at the moment are very expensive.
Do you think that home equity should be used in some way? Is there something the government can do to ensure that that happens?
We don't want to compel people to use home equity, but it should be there as a flexible option, and it already is there as a flexible option.
Obviously, this is a really difficult time for retirees now. What's your advice to retirees facing the situation at the moment with interest rates almost zero, certainly lower than they've ever seen before?
Yeah, this is really hard because obviously if you're very young, you can take on a lot more risk, and you know that over the next 30 or 40 years, you'll end up okay. Once you're hitting very close to retirement age, you want to really push that risk profile down, and so you tend to go to interest rate, fixed interest investments. That's paying you nothing now. But I would still caution that it's probably better to get a very low return that is guaranteed rather than to face high risk. And, you should never invest anything unless you can afford to lose it, basically. It was advice given to me a long time ago. You need to be cautious, but my ultimate advice would be get a professional. I'm not a financial advisor. Get a professional and understand your risk profile. What can you put at risk? What should you save?
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7.30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.
My name's Kristen Krippner. I live in Leura, in a beautiful place with my husband Jim and my mother Joy. I'm 63, my mother is 91. She's my world. I need you to think about what you're going to wear.
Something warm, thank you.
Okay.
How we came to live here in Leura with Joy was that she decided to move up here with us. Joy's cottage is what's called a secondary dwelling. It's only about 6 or 7 metres from us, our place across the deck.
Mama, do you want yogurt with yours today?
Oh, yes, thank you.
I felt secure. Plus, you know, being surrounded by love makes a hell of a difference.
About 2 years ago, she was diagnosed in the initial stages of a mild dementia. It has worsened very gradually. Kristen's dad went into care unexpectedly after a fall and with complications. And we saw what we felt was an unnecessarily rapid decline in him. Our aim is to keep Joy out of aged care as long as possible.
The thing I think of most is how fortunate, I'd put a bloody in there, but how fortunate I am, because, you know, you go into these old people's homes and, oh dear, abandon hope.
I think you have to talk about the finances in aged care because it is a big part of how you retain control of the process rather than be forced to take the only option that seems available in a time of crisis.
You have to be informed. Everybody needs to be informed.
I don't think we thought about it with Dad. We were probably a bit on the back foot because it happened unexpectedly. But I do know that most of his pension went on paying for the aged care.
And I feel we're giving Mum the best opportunity to be in the real world until the day she's no longer in the real world.
When it comes to care in later life, families are faced with many tough decisions, both emotionally and financially, often during a time of crisis.
I think it's one of those things that we tend to push to the side and then suddenly it's upon you and you're going, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this? We probably don't prepare enough for it. But clearly we need to rethink the way we approach the end-of-life care.
How much you pay for aged care comes down to individual circumstances, like what kind of help you need, what provider you go with, the services you receive and how wealthy you are. The daily fee, paid direct to your aged care home, is about $50 a day. That's nearly $20,000 a year. That helps pay for things like meals, cleaning and laundry. There's also a means-tested care fee, which can be anything up to around $250 a day. And then, if you can afford it, you're also expected to pay for your room. Now, you can either pay for this as a lump sum amount, which then gets refunded when the room is vacated, or make daily payments, like a hotel. Or you can do a combination of both. Australia's aged care system has just been exposed by the Pagoni Royal Commission as understaffed and with a workforce that's underpaid and undertrained. Now, understandably, a lot of people are opting to stay at home on a funding package that varies according to your needs. But join the queue. You could be waiting for years to get one of those. Senator Jane Hume is the Minister for Superannuation. The federal government is currently considering the retirement income review, led by Mike Callaghan.
One of the things that Callaghan determined was that there is a lack of understanding of the extent to which the health system and the aged care system is subsidised by government in retirement. And that potentially is one of the reasons why people are reluctant to draw down on more capital in retirement, because they fear that they might get sick or they might need to go to aged care, and they don't understand, because the systems are complex, just the extent to which they can rely on the government to help them with that.
While those who can't afford to pay for care will be covered by the government, if you can pay, you're expected to. Senator Hume, the Minister for Superannuation, and also Mike Callaghan, who led the Retirement Incomes Review, both say that people shouldn't be concerned about paying for aged care because the government covers so much of it. What do you make of that?
Well, that's certainly not my experience, and I think it depends where you end up. A lot of people don't have the choice to get a government-funded place, so they do what they can.
Who else hasn't got a partner?
Me. My name is Graham McMullen, and I am 68 years old.
My name's Don Jones, and I'm 71.
And I'm 74. I'm 79. I'm 84 in May.
Ready for a song? Yeah? All right, so here you go.
Every Wednesday night, seniors gather inside the New South Wales Gosford 50 Plus Leisure and Learning Centre. And this dance class might just be the elixir of life.
As soon as I hear the music, it makes me feel like I'm about 16.
I still think I'm 21.
I can do rock and roll, swing. I also do jazz ballet and tap, and anything that goes with music I'll do.
For many here, they don't want to go into care homes, and they're not alone. Exclusive data from Australian seniors reveals 43% of Australians aged 50 plus who were surveyed said the pandemic has changed their view on nursing homes.
I do know a little bit about aged care. I've had a look at a retirement village and I thought, that's not for me.
I wouldn't want to go into a nursing home.
I get depressed when I think of anything like that. That's why I do all the dancing. I'm not going to have enough money in my super. Now we've just lost a whole pile of it from this COVID.
I'm 71 and I did retire, and now with very low interest rates, I'm back in full-time work and supplementing the retirement fund.
And I live in a relocatable home park because that's all I could afford. As far as I know, I'll only have enough for another 3 years. The minute I feel down, I put music on.
When it comes to funding the aged care system, a total of $27 billion was spent in 2018-19. More than 75% was paid by the taxpayer and around 20% by the recipients of aged care.
We all know there's going to have to be a substantial increase in funding in aged care, very substantial increase in funding. But it's not just funding, of course. People want to see better quality in that, how those funds are being used.
The Department of Health says they'll respond to the funding issues raised by the Aged Care Royal Commission, including suggestions of a Medicare-style levy, in the upcoming budget. Could you explain the system of the sort of HECS loan type system that you came up with recently to help fund aged care?
We set up home and community care to keep people at home. The problem is there's now 100,000 people who have been awarded packages who can't get them. The Commonwealth's just not providing them. So what I believe should happen is the Commonwealth should open a wealth account for every aged person and advance to them loans to have those packages. And let's say somebody's getting a $25,000 package and they have it for 4 years before they die, say. That $100,000 is owed to the Commonwealth from the estate, right? In other words, we move away from any idea of a pre-funding to a post-funding package.
What if they haven't got any money in their estate? What if there's nothing in the estate?
Well, the Commonwealth pays that. In other words, it's a contingent loan, just like HECS. Like in a HECS loan, if a young person gets a degree and then never works, the loan's not repayable. The same would happen with aged care. The problem about pre-funding, that is, the problem about and I've been into this idea over the years about a longevity fund, is that we need to do this 30 years ago. So the fund would now have scale. But there's so many people now of retired age, the baby boomers, a group of them, there's no way some pre-funding model is going to do that. So I believe we should move to a post-funding model, and we can do it with loans, just like HECS.
And you think you're saying that those loans should be focused entirely on home care, staying at home, not on going into a nursing home.
No, that's it. Now the funding of nursing homes, low care, middle care, and high care, and nursing homes, a different issue again. and nursing home standards are appalling, and that's what the Royal Commission has directed its attention to, appropriately in my view, you know. So there needs to be a big change in the outlays in respect of the quality of nursing home attention, staffing, responsibility, accountability, but that's after you go into care. The key to the whole cost is to keep people at home.
Born during the Great Depression, Velma Pearl McCallum lived through the Korean War, the Vietnam War and the Cold War. She became a librarian, a pharmacist and a lecturer. Now 88, Velma lives alone.
I've lived in this home for 18 years. I have lived alone ever since my husband passed away in 2004.
I've got your photos in here for you, so would you like me to lift them out?
I had a stroke early last year. I had a back condition which has worsened. I've been diagnosed as a diabetic. I now need help with most household tasks. I was assessed as needing level 3 home care package, but I was allocated only a level 2 with a vague promise that level 3 would appear soon afterwards. I've had notification that the home care package has been approved. In order to pay for the extra care that I need, I applied for and was granted a pension loan which involved mortgaging my house. And if it were not for this scheme, I would have to go into permanent care because I wouldn't be able to afford to live in my own home. In my case, it doubles the part pension that I receive, and that roughly covers the carers and the gardener. My goal is to stay in my own home as long as possible.
While there are these waiting lists, I think people even using the pensioner loan scheme to help support themselves to achieve the services that require, not to suffer now when you've got the assets available there that you can deal with some of the needs you have now. I think that's a sensible thing to do, to be able to use your assets to meet your requirements.
No matter what your views are, from the day we're born, all our financial decisions have a flow-on effect. The choices we make and the ones that are made for us matter. Navigating the retirement system right through to old age is not easy. But as with anything in life, knowledge is power.
It's up to us as consumers to do our research and to work out where the best place is to put our money. Get informed.
It can actually be the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement.
What people need is advice.
And that's why super matters so much, Alan. That's why superannuation matters just so much.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7.30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.